Kevin, do you have a different
No,
view?
no, I wouldn't have a different view. But I mean, one of the things which I'd say is cloud, in my view, shouldn't be treated as a separate topic. It really is a tool in the toolbox.
Right.
So the skills the CIO needs to apply, the thinking they need to apply, the pitfalls are exactly the same as they would in any other area, you know, the CIO's role, and would have been for the last 10 years. So what I would say about CIOs is the idea of it's, you know, the chap with the white lab coat and, you know, and the vibrating floor and the super cool back room. You know, those days died in the 60s. You know, CIOs today, to be successful, you know, I think you need to be technically savvy. True in the cloud as well. You know, it's not an abrogation of responsibility. You need to understand the technology. You need to be commercially focused. You need to be an agent of change. You need to be able to understand the business and bring the business around with you, with or without the cloud. And 20 years ago, it was equally true. So all of those things are still I think, still apply. What I would say about the cloud is if anyone thinks the cloud is easy, you can read an article and you know something about it, you think it's going to save you money out the box because, you know, it's got the C word, so it must be good because everyone's talking about it and the pictures are good, you know, you will get burnt. If you think it's hard, you're not quite sure what to do, you approach it with trepidation, then you're probably going to make a success of it because it is hard. You know, the benefits are enormous, but I think you need to approach it from the position of, A, what type of a CIO are you? And what type of a job have you got? And there are really three types of CIOs, and maybe you like benchmark yourself. You know, one is the really keep the lights on, manage the cost down, you know, business as usual, reduce the cost by 5%. And that's one kind of a CIO. Really important job, but it's not one I'm really interested in. There's the other one who's very good at changing things and organizing and running a tight ship and integrating. And these CIOs, typically, their roles expand, and they end up running large parts of the organization outside IT, and I've done those roles. And then you get the other one where it's about innovation and really driving the company's ability forward. It might be technical. I mean, it might be an airline company saying, instead of going to the travel agent and buying a ticket and getting your paper, you can go online and choose which seat you want, and the prices can change real time. You know, all these ideas came out of CIOs. It didn't come out of the marketing department. So if you're one of those kind of CIOs, then the cloud is a very, very rich tool to have in your pocket. It's got some hidden risks. So people talk about security and things, but I'll just give you one other risk people don't think about. And in a previous life, I was an advisor to actually have a very well-known cloud provider. And one of the risks was, which I saw as a consumer, so I was never a client of this, was, you know, they charge you for the CPUs, you know, for the virtual machines you had over time, and I understood that. And they charge you for storage, and I understood that. But they also charge you for the data moving around within the cloud. And the problem I had on my own compute farm, we have 1,000 servers. I know what 1,000 servers do. I know what the storage is. I could measure that. I had no idea how much data was moving around. I had no clue. But it turned out that would be the dominant cost with this vendor. So as soon as you go there, you know, you actually have no idea what your costs are going to be. So I think you need to work out what your drivers are and what your risks are. But you know, it's an enormously powerful tool, but it's not a panacea. You know, you need to go in saying, this is what I want to do. I want to cut costs here. I want to turn this into utility. You know, you might have an internal cloud where you need lots of development and test environments, but not simultaneously. I'd call that virtualization or an internal cloud, but that's not a public cloud offering necessarily. Could be. So I really think we need to be businessmen and focus on what is the problem we're solving, and then the cloud should be at the top of our mindset as to a possible tool. But if you arrive there and say, I'm under pressure to cut costs by 30%, I'm going to use the cloud. Well, I mean, 10 years ago, people say, I'm going to cut costs, I'm going to outsource, you know, and all those contracts blew up later. Okay. So the same will happen again.
Okay, good. I mean, we've been talking about some of the, indirectly, we've been talking about some of the misperceptions around cloud. Some of them seem to be about the fact that it's an all-encompassing solution, that it's purely a solution oriented towards helping reduce cost. We've heard some other comments about the fact that, generally speaking, there is a misunderstanding as to the ease of implementation. You need to be aware of some of the other risks that are maybe less obvious. So, David, from your standpoint in CPS, are there any other sort of challenges or misperceptions that you've picked up in association to, in relation to cloud, that you've had to address somehow?
There aren't, because it's not a discussion I'd have.
Okay.
Taking the point about the tools that we have available to us, there are a number of tools that are available to us, as Kevin has alluded to, and they're quite profound in what we can achieve inside our own business environments. But if you're going to have a debate about or discussion on senior decision making on one of those tools, then that should be at the culmination, if you're going to have it at all, of a long period of, or a detailed period of assessment rather than long. You know, the idea that I would go and discuss with lawyers the ins and outs of the cloud and whether we should be private, public, government or anything else, it's just not a discussion they want to be having. They want to be able to get to court with their information, conduct their business in the most cost-effective and efficient manner, win their cases and move forward.
Yeah.
Cloud, they'll look at me and have a gaze out the window.
Yeah.
They could get quite clever with me as well if I had that type of debate. It's just not a subject for them.
Okay.
And the saying goes, you start talking to a police officer about cloud, where else is around here? She'll give you a better position on it, or go into, ironically, there's one or two people around the piece that you wouldn't necessarily align to having those type of discussions, but they are, as individuals, very keen, and they're embracing the technologies for their own use. And they I see, bringing it into the world of justice. But they're kind of doing it from a expertise perspective and interest perspective, not because it's going, that's the solution they expect to, or the discussions they expect to have with a CIO. With the CIOs, how do we make this work properly? Safely, surely, quickly, etc.
Okay, that's good. Now, at this point, I'd just like to, because I haven't seen any hands go up, and apologies if I did miss. There's a few. Go ahead.
Always SEB Estonia. In 2007, April, in the time of Russian cyber war against Estonia, we had to disconnect Estonia for 2 days, for 48 hours. And because of this, there is in preparation Estonian law of emergency that tells us that in the case of emergency, Estonia's critical infrastructure enterprises, companies, must have the ability to provide at least minimum mission critical services when Estonia is disconnected from the other one. Are there any such laws in preparation? Maybe this will be that in European Union or whatever.
Okay.
And what do you think of such a problem?
So
we are facing cyber criminals very heavily nowadays, and disconnecting some areas from others is not something unusual, I think.
Right.
Thank you.
Who would like to
so I actually sit on a couple of European standards bodies with the EU around this kind of thing and a few other things. So interestingly, it's the EU isn't actually coming out with any legislation necessarily prescribing a particular type of cloud, but there are certain things being said about location. And the challenge we have in technology is that lawyers are about 20 years behind technology in most cases. So you'll find these strange laws that say that data has to be in a certain location. Now, the only realistic reason I can see why all UK data has to be within the UK, for example, like all Estonian systems, is for exactly the example you're talking about. So when I talk to governments about this, there's an imperative they must be able to operate autonomously, disconnected from the rest of the world, but running their own infrastructure, and that's perfectly understandable. But those pieces of legislation are going to be coming from a government and prescribed towards particular government systems. And so, you know, if you, for example, you look at G-Cloud, when you get to certain levels, IL3 and above, and certain other things, then there's certain prescriptions there that that data cannot exist outside the UK, and so on and so forth, and that will continue.
Generation.